and I have been doing a lot of extra learning in the ArcGIS map for a couple of projects. And it has some really cool functionality, so I thought that would be really interesting to go through. And just reaching out to a couple more potential speakers just to get their perspective on those two maps. So I think mapping for environmental applications is always a really big question, and it's always a little bit challenging in Power BI. So that will be next month. So just keep checking back in. We'll update it on social media and on the meetup page as well when it's ready.
Perfect. And as you would have all seen, there should be a notification that we've now started the recording. So we're underway with that. So welcome everyone to the September edition of the PowerBI4Enviro's. Great to have you all involved, whether you're first time people dialing in or if you've been with us for a fair while now, welcome. So just a bit of just general housekeeping. Please mute when not speaking, just as a courtesy to Damien, Daniel and Alice, who will be our key presenters for today's session. Feel free to type questions in the chat. We'll have a fair few moderators available to either answer questions through the chat, or alternatively, there'll be a few opportunities during the session for a bit of Q&A. Just so everyone knows, these sessions are being recorded, and we'll share the recordings and the blog through our YouTube and through the meetup group as well. So before we begin, just like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle Walyulup area that Alice and I are dialing in from, and pay our respects to their elders past and present, as well as also extending the acknowledgement to the traditional owners from where yourself are dialing in from, whether that's within Australia or just Indigenous peoples across our global sort of meetup community that we have. So Discovery Eye, Alice and I, co-founders. We also have Daniel that works with us as well. We put on these meetups, try and aim for every month. Sometimes we get it every month, sometimes we don't. Yeah, the sort of work that we do is largely Power BI focused, but working across the environmental and the water industries, which is our background. And onto why everyone's dialed in. So today's session, we're looking at what's known as the Dredge Dash. So a Dredge Power BI dashboard, which shows real-time dredging project management, information and detail, and it's a tool that utilizes Power BI. So this is Damien, who's the main presenter of today, is the director of Swash project delivery. And this was his sort of vision and idea, and he sort of came to Alice and I a few years back. And over the last couple of years, we've sort of been working with Damien to refine and update the tool to its current sort of state. So the reason that this Power BI report was sort of built is dredging projects are critical to maintaining or establishing navigational access to ports, waterways and maritime infrastructure. So data collection and reporting can often be cumbersome and delayed. And so Damien at Swash wanted to develop an interactive dredging dashboard as a bit of a one-stop shop for monitoring dredging projects. Real-time data could be monitored in the form of vessel locations and camera images, and you'll see some examples of how that comes into the Power BI report, as well as also the ability to track historical activities through vessel track plots and heat maps. So utilising the icon map, custom visual, and a lot of the functionality that we have there. This session will largely demo the tools used across the Microsoft stack and focus, largely on the Power BI report front-end delivery. So your key presenters today will be Damien, who will be discussing the reports, the ideas, and then we're really trying to get a bit of a robust conversational style presentation. Damien, I'll let you do a little bit more of an introduction of yourself if you wish. I do see one of the things that I jump at is you do park runs. Very cool. I'm a big running advocate myself, so maybe you can elaborate on that. But look, that's it in terms of introductions. Without further ado, mate, happy for you. We can stop sharing and happy for you to take it away with Alice and Daniel sort of helping you out as you go.
Excellent. Thank you, Christian and the Discovery AI team, and thanks for the opportunity to present on Dredge Dash today. Hopefully you can see my screen there for the Dredge Dash, just confirming, Alice.
Yeah, all good.
All good. Great. And thanks to everyone for attending, whether online live today or looking at a future recording. So appreciate your time out of your busy days. And appreciate probably a lot more Power BI audience than dredging people in the field here in the audience. But yeah, happy to answer any questions along the way. So just quickly, what Christian just touched on about dredging. So dredging, just briefly, essentially is removing sediments from the seafloor or riverbeds and relocating that sediment, whether it's sand or gravel or clays and silts, elsewhere, and whether we put that on land or somewhere else underwater. And one reason why we dredge is to maintain navigational access for whether it's commercial shipping or for recreational boating, such as the case on the Gold Coast in Australia here. So we were looking to maintain waterway access for boats coming in and out of the entrance, ocean access, and to get to marinas and harbours and the like. And in this case, we were dredging clean sand and taking it underwater and near shore on some of the Gold Coast northern beaches for coastal protection and beach nourishment purposes. So why, before I get into all the Power BI, I guess why the need for Dredge Dash? So as Christian touched on, it was probably about 3 years ago. I contacted Alice and Christian and the Discover AI team. I was project managing a dredging project, and there's a lot of reporting. Well, there's a lot of stakeholders. You report to a lot of stakeholders, both internally and externally, whether it's the engineering team or the project management team, the environmental team, comms team, management. So a lot of stakeholders. There's also a lot of reporting. So daily reports, weekly reports, monthly reports, closeout reports, and they're all Word documents, PDFs, and you're getting information from spreadsheets, websites, contractor dredge logs, etc. And I really wanted to just streamline that process, create a one-stop shop where anyone could access, all the information in one spot, and for all stakeholders, whether it's internal or external, and provide real-time data too. So often with dredging contractors, you're waiting on their dredge logs or reports from the day before. You might get daily reports the next day, or you might only get weekly reports. So you might know what's been happening out in the field. You might have supervision, but it might be at a remote site as well. So being able to have real-time data of vessel locations or plant locations, one-stop shop, being able to analyze the data and have some really great visuals for the different members of the team. So for project progress in terms of KPIs and production and cost monitoring, or for environmental compliance for these types of projects. And also really having that easy report generation, so we can use the dashboard both to view online, but also generate some daily, weekly PDF reports just to file automatically. And just before we go on to the dashboard too, so when we were looking at this 3 years ago, I think it was COVID as well at the time, so there was a lot of remote project monitoring and management at the time. There's other dashboards out there that do environmental monitoring for dredging projects, so particularly around water quality, or monitoring is the key thing. There's also other dashboards that have really good live camera feeds of the coastline and can provide weather and mid-ocean data. But I wanted a bit more than that. I wanted to combine all that and also have all the information to track the project, both from a production progress and being able to analyze all that information and visualize it as well. So Power BI, I think, became the answer. I saw some of the work that Daniel had done and Alice had done, and we just had conversations and got the ball rolling 3 years ago and just been improving ever since. So it's just see the unlimited potential to tailor for future projects, particularly in the dredging space, but also other areas as well. All right, let's I'll go on to the Dredge Dash itself. So I think the process is I'll do a bit of a talk on each of the 5 pages and then hand over to Alice and Daniel to talk a bit more about the back end. But if I just go through this first screen here, so essentially wanted to have one main page where kind of had most of the important information for anyone to look at. For dredging projects, a couple of lines up the top here to look at yesterday's date. Hopper volume is the amount of material or sand that we take out per trip. This type of dredge that we're looking at, it fills up the ship or a hopper in the dredge vessel with sand, and then it takes it to another location and places it out at sea. So it does a trip, one cycle or one trip, and also productive hours for the project. So that way you get a quick snapshot of what happened yesterday for the dredging activities, as well as a cumulative line for number of trips and volumes, etc. And top right, just having a high level safety and environmental incidents if there's been an incident on the project, etc. On the right hand side, just a bit more detail. In this project, we broke down the dredge areas into 8 or so locations, 8 or 9, and we just monitored progress in terms of the volume of sand that we removed at each of those locations throughout the project. But the fun stuff for me is the mapping on the bottom left-hand side. So we've got three maps, which Alice can talk to a bit more in detail later on, but just so you can see where we are. I don't know if you can see my cursor, Alice, moving around, but
yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Alice. We're in Australia. We're on the east coast of Australia. And if I zoom in, we're at the southern end of Queensland on the Gold Coast. One of the great benefits of Power BI, there's other services as well that monitor vessel movements around the world. But using Power BI, we were able to develop specific icons, that match the actual vessel. So here we've got a vessel from another project that we've just brought in to show for this live stream today. So this is a vessel, the Discovery. It's got the icon matches the vessel. So for people to visually see which vessel is where, it kind of color matched and size matched accordingly. And then just to hover over it and you get a photo of the vessel and the date and time stamp of its location. So just a really handy visual tool. There's some other vessels that you can see, and you can put a number of vessels and plant on this map. The other benefit for this map, by I guess being able to tailor it, we can highlight the dredge locations. So in green here, we've got the actual dredge locations that these vessels operated in over a period of 6 months, and in red here we have where the sand was relocated to. So this is the approved placement area on some of the Gold Coast northern beaches underwater, so it's in depths of less than 9 meters, but being able to show visually where we're taking sediment or sand to. So that's the one mapping. We've got 3 maps because I like maps. I'll skip to the third one, which is vessel tracking. Just wait for it to load up. So dredging contractors typically provide a dredge track plot the next day or weekly. It's not so much the vessel location, but it's also part of the dredge vessel that's on the sea floor to track the exact location. But for our intents and purposes, it was good to see where the dredge has gone every day. So the ability to see this tracks the vessel, and we get the data comes in every 2 minutes. So we've got, we can see where a vessel was on a particular day and time, and that's important for any environmental compliance issues or just for project tracking. We can see here that the sand has been placed in the, I guess we're aiming for the outer third of this big red triangle, and then this particular vessel was just locating sand or placing sand in this northern half of it as well. So we can see all its track plots for this week. On the slices, we can pick a week or a day or a month, and we can also pick, a particular vessel to look at. So we can go in and see where a vessel was on a particular day, or if no dredging occurred on that day, etc. The other cool thing down the bottom left, another slicer. So we've got the vessel speed. So dredging and placement activities kind of happen when the vessel's moving slowly under 3 knots, and then it goes at a faster speed when it's moving from the dredge location to the placement location. So if I want to kind of see where, not just where it's been, but also where it's been dredging and placing material, if I take that down to around vessel speed of around 3 knots with the slicer on the bottom left, just wait for it to upload, and then you can zoom in here and I can see it's been dredging in this south channel here. You can see it's been placing material in the placement area here. So just really breaks out not just the vessel transit routes, but also just where it's been dredging and placing material. And then a third one, just to make another cool visual, which Alice and the team have done, is the heat maps. So I'll just extend it for the whole date range of the project. And I think, Christian, you talked about park runs, but also AFL we've been talking about. I think AFL and sports, you can heat maps of where players have been running around on the football field or whatever else. So this is just a quick snapshot. I'll go back out to 12 knot speed down the bottom left. This just really shows the project effort. So where the dredging has been occurring or placement activities and where the dredge vessel's been moving. So it's just a really cool visual. I know we've had some clients post this on their images of this on their LinkedIn accounts and Facebook posts, because it's just a cool graphic to show people where the project activities have been happening. Zoom in, so out on the right here, they've been dredging on the bar outside the entrance here, and focusing on a few areas inside the water channels as well. And then this is a vessel transit route down to the placement area. Again, I can just slice it down the bottom left, take the vessel speed down to 3 knots, or roughly 3 knots, and it'll just focus on where it's been dredging and placing material. So it takes out that vessel speeds are greater than 3 knots. And again, you can see been placing all in that outer third of the placement area on the Gold Coast. So just another cool feature. I think probably I might just hand over to Alice first, or Daniel, if you want to talk about any of those 3 maps.
No, thanks so much.
How you did it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Damien. It's really interesting just to hear the context and hear how these visuals and dashboards are being used to help track data and inform project management and decisions. So no, thank you so much. I think if we just flick back to the current vessel locations map, what I'll do now is just talk through the Power BI visuals and the cool features that we use to create these 3 maps, which, as Damien mentioned, are the hero visuals on this report page. So this first map here, you might have guessed it because we can have icons on the map. We've actually used a custom visual called icon map for this mapping visual. And icon map's probably my favorite mapping visual in Power BI because it allows us to not only plot our data, but it allows us to customize things like custom icons, which I bring into the map visual as an image URL. So that's the icon you can see there. It supports report page tooltips, which you can see Damien's hovering over the icon. It allows us to bring up that extra contextual information, like the last updated time. You can see that's already been updated as we've been talking. And also it allows us to bring in custom base layers. So Damien mentioned that it was important to have that extra contextual information about key locations of the dredging and the dredging placement area for this project. An icon map allows you to bring in custom base map layers. So we've created this one actually using a Mapbox account. So you can bring in a Mapbox base layer into icon map, as well as lots of other online mapping platforms. So it allows that big flexibility. This is also the same. We've used icon map as well for the vessel tracking path and direction map. If you wanted to click on this, that one. And this has a couple of kind of neat features of icon map as well. So icon map supports location. So we saw that with the current vessel location as a point, but it also supports lines and polygons as well. This map actually has a lot of data in it, so thanks, Damien. It's filtering down a small period.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think it does have a limit of the number of data points, so that's something to be aware of. As with most Power BI visuals, it does have a limit, so that's why it wasn't rendering before. But you can see here that we're plotting here polylines on the map. And icon map, it allows you to bring in a start and end latitude and longitude. So you can actually, you don't even need to have the line string if you have your start and end latitude and longitudes. And this allows you to kind of dynamically bring in data like this. So I think James Dales, who's the author of this visual, he has a really cool example demo report, which is using Icon Map for mapping aeroplane path routes. So it's really good for tracking different routes. You can also, on this map, we also did try at one stage to bring in an icon which shows the direction. So like an arrowhead. And with your icons in Icon Map, you can also apply a rotation. So we had that data, but the end result was, because there are so many data points, it looked very, very busy and quite hard to decipher just because the paths were going back and forth, back and forth. So we've taken that feature out. It's a little bit of a cleaner visual now without the extra icon. But if you didn't have so much traffic or so much data, then that is also another really good option. And the third map, which Damien showed, the heat map. This was a map which we created using another custom visual. This time we used the Mapbox custom visual. And the reason why we chose Mapbox is very easily out of the box, it allows you to do heat maps. We don't get too much control over it, but for this, we were just really interested in having a look at kind of the density of where the vessel had been the most. And so I think for the purpose of this report, it was it fit the bill and it was very easy to configure. You just need to bring in your longitude and latitudes, and you can create that heat map effect. And because it is Mapbox, it also supports custom Mapbox base layers. So we could use that same base layer across the 3 different maps, even though they're created using different visuals. So there, that's a little bit of an overview of the Power BI kind of visuals, but the data actually feeding into this report, because here we're presenting current vessel locations, and we're also tracking the historic vessel kind of path movement and everything. There's a lot going on in the back end to automate this data processing and getting it into Power BI. I'll hand over to Daniel just to chat through kind of the tech and the solution that he developed for this. And also we've got a question in the chat just about how often is the dashboard data refreshed. So I'll quickly answer that. The dashboard data is refreshed. We just got it on a pro account, so we're refreshing it only 8 times a day. But what we're using for the current vessel locations is actually a direct query. So that is bringing in the live data for the current vessel location. So that one's up to date, but the rest of the data is import mode. So that gets refreshed 8 times. But yeah, Daniel, if you wanted just to give an overview of the marine kind of traffic API, and the logic apps, and kind of how you tied that together into the database.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Alice has said, with the Power BI model we want to use is a hybrid model. So we use import for the majority of the data. So that's basically the vessel tracking path and direction map and the heat map that you see. That's imported 8 times a day. So we would call that the historical data. That's data that, you know, we keep a track of, but it doesn't change moment to moment in the report. The current vessel locations, as Alice said, is done on what we call direct query. So Power BI allows us to have either import or direct query, or a hybrid model, which is what we're actually going with here. So the leftmost map, current vessel locations, is roughly every 2 minutes, provided that the APIs that we're monitoring give us new information. And in terms of how we get that information, that is pretty much done through what we call the Marine Traffic API. So Damien has subscriptions to APIs for each project that we're monitoring. We have set up because it's a web service, because it's moment to moment, we're not able to interrogate it historically. And we have limits to what we can actually get and how often we're allowed to query it. So to allow us to build this report, we've built a SQL database in Azure. So that's just a SQL Server database that you can just get on a hosting plan. And it's a very, very simple setup. So what we've done to basically serve the tooling and also keep costs fairly light, because with databases, you can pay for as much or as little as you need, but the costs, excuse me, the costs will vary depending on things like how much compute resource you need, how much storage you need, and those kinds of things. So with some engineering, you can pick up a database very, very cheaply running on SQL Server, which is a really nice, well-supported product with Power BI. Runs in the cloud and has nice connectivity options for what we're trying to do, for as cheap as we can get a database, which is quite nice. And in that database, we have just a couple of tables. It's not very complicated. So firstly, we have a list of Damien's projects. And with each project, we have a key for the marine traffic API. So a key being the ability to access that API in an approved manner. Each project has a key. And when we submit a request to that API, the API gives us a list of the vessels that it currently knows about and their positions, and also their speed, and I believe their direction. So every couple of minutes, we have the opportunity to pull those APIs, get that information. And what we do at that point is we store it in the database. So what we're doing is we're accumulating historic information. And as we accumulate that information, what we talked about a minute ago when Alice talked about the polylines on the map, we actually get the previous and next coordinates so that we can actually generate those lines in the database layer, which is really handy. Secondly, we kind of offshoot to a kind of caching table. So when you talk about a caching table, that's just, it's a table that we need quick access to and perform well. Because this historical data accumulates, when we want to get the immediate current locations, we just want a nice quick table to ping from. So as we process the data, which we'll talk about in just a sec, we siphon that off to another table that Power BI just looks at. And that's just a list of all vessels and their current positions. So that map can update really quickly and as soon as we get that information. So that is how we're storing and feeding Power BI. In terms of how we're integrating that API to the database, we are using something called Azure Functions. So Azure Functions are, again, another product that Microsoft hosts inside Azure, which is their cloud resource. And functions are the ability for us to write code that can just run in isolation. So we can write a little piece of code, and this code is used to basically poll the API. It runs on a timer. So every 2 minutes, this code is saying, have a look at the database for a list of Damien's projects, find which ones are active, make a request to the API, and for anything that comes back, just work through what we've got and store them in the database. So it's a very simple workflow. And because functions, Azure Functions, are very cheap to run, and if we don't go over a certain threshold in terms of how much time we take to execute that or how much compute resource, they can be really, really economical. So this function runs every couple of minutes. It takes roughly 2 seconds to run to completion, and that's polling the API, processing the results, storing them in a database for Power BI. And I think that's the most elegant way I can sum it up.
Oh, that was awesome. Thanks, Daniel. I think that's all of the kind of key components. But I think, yeah, Daniel worked really hard to create a simple solution as possible, one that I am now maintaining, and I don't do SQL or Azure Functions or anything like that, but also something that is sustainable long term, just with the costs. These things can get quite costly if you don't manage it. If you're not on top of all of the kind of constraints. So yeah, I think it's a real fit for purpose solution. Just quickly with the other data sets coming in that we see on this page, that is literally just stored in an Excel file, which Damien can update, which is saved on a SharePoint site. So again, we're trying to develop fit for purpose solutions that fit the project and the people and the teams who are using them. So something like Excel is really familiar and easy to maintain and update data like this. We didn't want to lock away everything in a database and make it really inaccessible for Damien and his team to update and maintain. So we've got a blend of different kind of technologies here with the dashboard. We just have one quick question, Daniel, just regarding the part where you mentioned about the Azure function, pulling the data from an API and storing it in a database. What database did you use?
It's a SQL Server running on Azure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you got the bit of the beginning of the conversation, but yeah, we procured an Azure SQL database. So that's SQL Server running inside Azure. It's the cheapest, smallest database that you can get out of the available SKUs. So that's the products that are on offer. And it gives us more than enough storage for Damien's needs. And with careful tuning of that database and indexing, we can actually get really good performance out of it.
Awesome. We just have another quick question from Tim. Is the vessel positioned by direct querying the database or to another API you've built?
No, it's a database. So we have two tables in the database. We essentially have a table of all the historic data, which is used by Power BI for import. And again, another performance hack was to we didn't want direct query in Power BI to have to traverse that every 2 minutes because the query costs are quite high. So when the API does its processing, we just put the latest values in a separate database table, which is only a few, it's very few rows because it's only as many rows as there have been the number of unique vessels across all of Damien's projects. And that's very, very quick to scan. So Power BI can read it real quick. The performance is fast and it keeps the cost down on Azure SQL as well. So there's a little bit of data redundancy, but it's actually well managed. And yep, it's essentially a database table. So the API request and the Azure function delegates that out, puts it in the right tables, and that's basically all there is to it.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. I think that's all of the questions. Please keep writing them in the chat and we'll answer them as we go. But Damien, did you want to take us to the next page?
Yeah, sure. And I will skim through the next couple of pages, but just a quick one for environmental people here and also interested in dredging and sand. So the other benefit besides dredge locations and placement, you could put seagrass mapping or coral or whatever other environmental sensitive receptors are around on a project. So you can also see that visually as well. So that's another benefit of this mapping. And also you can add other, doesn't have to be a dredge vessel. We can put GPS trackers on excavators or dozers that are moving sand around on a beach and to see where, beach nourishment's occurring as well. So plenty of potential. I'll skip through these two, but essentially just for project managers with dredging, it's really just looking at dredging progress. So we want to track typically volumes. So I love being able to go to a table mode and then I can see on a particular day, this dredge vessel removed 1,211 cubic meters of sand and this vessel 2,900 and cumulative totals on the right. So really useful tool, and to come back and look on a particular day, what happened. And just some other little ones here, just showing a number of, or the volume of sand that each vessel's removed. On the top right, number of trips that each vessel's done out to the placement areas, 144 for the Fukon, 115. Bottom left just breaks it down by dredge area. So each area had a different amount of volume to remove. Can focus on one particular and etc. and just see how much sand's removed against how much we need to remove. And the bottom right, it's not showing now, but basically a 7-day look ahead. So we had the next 7 days as a calendar and showing which dredge areas we were going to target. So whether it's A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, or H. So it's just handy for project managers to see the next 7-day look ahead where we're targeting dredging. So I might just skip on from that one, Alice, interest of time, but we can come back to it. Another kind of simple but an important page, safety and environmental. So just providing some high-level stats. Has there been an incident? Safety and environmental up the top. With dredging, marine species sightings are important, as well as, if you've got excessive sediment plumes, turbidity caused by dredging, if they're more than 300 meters or 250 meters, etc. So we just track all that on a daily basis, input it in the data set that Alice mentioned on the right. On the left-hand side, we've just got two little tables with hover tips, so I can go to a date. If it's green, it's good. No environmental incidents or spills. And if it's yellow, it might be something like there was a marine species sighting. We saw 6 dolphins nearby and we did this or this action or this action. And red if there's an incident occur. So just a quick snapshot, you can really just see if the project's going well. You can link to, I guess, incident report numbers to go find further details within your organisation on a particular incident, environmental or safety, and just clicking between safety and environmental. Again, no safety incidents on this date, all green, looks good. Alice, I can either skip to the next page, or did you want to say anything on these last 2 pages?
Yeah, no, I'll just mention just on this page here, the visual that you're looking at there, the calendar, just in case anyone was wondering what visual we use to create this, because I do know there's a lot of different calendar custom visuals in Power BI. This one, we're actually just using the standard matrix visual with conditional formatting. So we've just expanded out the rows so we can see year, month, week. And then we've got the days across as columns. And then we're just applying conditional formatting, whether it's successful, stable, or an incident occurred, so that you can provide extra info on hover and things like that as well. So it doesn't always have to be custom visuals. You can really customize the core visuals as well to suit kind of your needs and things like that. But no, I think the rest of the visuals on these pages, nothing tricky is happening, nothing too complex in the back end. The data's just stored in Excel. Damien can update it.
Yeah. Thanks, Alice. And just gives a high level, simple view for anyone to see. Obviously, the details of incidents and the like are kept in other parts of the organisation. Yeah, and then the last two pages probably got a bit more back end information. So weather and mid-ocean data is important for dredging. So essentially, we wanted to bring in all this data. So we've sourced data, and I'll let Daniel or Alice talk to in a minute. But data from Australian Bureau of Meteorology for the rainfall and wind speeds, and then wave data and tidal data from the Queensland Department of Environment and Science. Up the top for the date range that we pick, normally the date range slicer on the top there, we just set to the last 7 days, so people can just go to that page and just see for the last 7 days, and then you can reset for whatever period you want. But just provides a handy snapshot of the highest wind speeds or wave heights, etc. So why are they important for us? Rainfall is important to know because you might have high rainfall and runoff events leading to higher turbidity. So I guess the water's not as clear during rainfall and runoff events, and it's from natural conditions as opposed to dredging. So it's important being able to go back to a particular day to see that is important. Wind speed and wave direction are important for, I guess, when a dredge can and can't operate. So they can't operate, for example, we go here and the maximum wave height's 2.83 meters. So typically a dredge vessel might be able to go out in open water above 1.5 meters wave height, or for wind speeds more than 25 knots. So we can, if they're looking to put an extension of time claim in for a contract, we can go back and see for those few days, yes, they couldn't get out to sea to place sand out at sea because it was too windy or the waves were too high. So good reference for project managers also and contract administration. And again, slices here and on the vertical direction too, we can do different things. So, and then the bottom right was just tides. It's probably more important for dredge operators. Sometimes dredging shallow waterways of 2.5 meters depth. So it's important to get in on those high tides when there's an extra 2 meters of water on top of that. So you can get your dredge vessel in a certain location on the high tide. So yeah, and that's a 1 week look ahead. I think we had it as, so yeah, being that predictive look ahead for the week ahead. Yeah, I'll throw to Alice and Daniel on the back end, how we got that data.
Yeah, no worries. To get this data in, we did have a look at a couple of different options. So Daniel, maybe we'll talk to this together. I think the first option that we looked at was having a look at getting the data directly from the APIs managed by Bureau of Meteorology and DES. And we got really far down this path, but I think from memory, it all got blocked when we tried to automate the refresh in the Power BI online service. Was that correct?
I think it was. We had a lot of repetitive queries, I think, and we wanted to really centralize our logic for doing it, but unfortunately Power Query just didn't. So it works in desktop just fine, but when you publish a report that calls APIs to the Power BI service, it has to almost work the lineage out, and sometimes it just hits a roadblock where it can't move beyond. If you've declared like a variable to handle the connections to an API and you want to use that to switch between things, it can't follow the lineage back, and it kind of stops and says, sorry, I can't refresh. That's the gist of it. It's a bit more fun than that if you love APIs, but ultimately it was kind of blocking us from doing a scheduled refresh.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a big frustration point, and I haven't found anybody that's really overcome it yet in my network, sadly. It'd be cool if we could.
Yeah, it does crop its head up on a couple of projects. We're always wary about using APIs directly in Power BI if you want to automate refreshes. So that's something just to be aware of. The solution that we ended up going down was one of Damien's kind of consultants he partners with a lot. Andy from Port and Coastal Solutions had a web scraping tool already developed to scrape this data automatically from these websites, export it into a CSV, which then he automates the upload into Damien's Azure Blob storage. So that's done on a daily basis. It has some security elements in there as well, just to prevent him from uploading kind of different files or other people from accessing it. You always have to be careful about the security components, but that solution's been working really well. So it's just uploading a CSV file into Azure Blob, which we're reading into Power BI just using import mode. We can process out the data, and it's just once a day, which is fine for the data refresh. Was there anything else in that kind of process, Daniel, which you wanted to highlight?
I think, I mean, you covered it pretty well. I mean, I can speak to the security a little bit just in case anybody's considering something similar. So with Azure Blob Storage, it's kind of like, it's just like a drive on a disk. You can drop files and create folders and various other things. And obviously with this handing the keys to a third party, we want to, obviously we trust Andy, he's a cool guy. But we want to make sure it's not just for our security, but also for the efficacy of his script. So he has a script that does this and automatically uploads every morning. So what we can do in blob storage is we can create what's called a shared access signature. And what that does is we can find a file or a folder, but we do it at a file level. So let's say there's multiple files that he provides us. We create a shared signature for each file, and that's a unique token with expiry. So we renew those every now and again so that the access is continually evaluated. And in his upload scripts, that token has to be unique for each file. And what that means is that he can't use the same script to upload 4 files. And what that does is that essentially creates a secure tunnel for each file. And it means that just in case there are any issues with a script not processing the file correctly or cross purposes, we're not putting files over the wrong files. So what it essentially means is each script with each file has its own kind of contract with our blob storage. And it just means that ensures reliability as well.
Yeah, awesome. No, thanks for clarifying that. But I think, yeah, that's everything on this page. Damien, if you wanted to go on to the next page.
I will, and I'll just see the question about tracking vessel emissions. Yes, I think it's typically done these days, and yes, would be added to other dashboards now, but through fuel usage for vessels. So yeah, do track it, greenhouse gas emissions through fuel usage for vessels on dredging projects and plant. And then the last page, I like to have, besides the maps, it's always nice to have the pretty visuals and to see what's happening. Yeah, some people like looking at data, some people love to see, and it's not a bad place for a project to work on. So this was just an image gallery. Some great benefits. There was ability to drop in photos from the project team on the left in an image gallery just to see so you've got a record of project photos throughout the project. My favorite one's the smiley parachute there. And then on the right-hand side is probably the more important stuff. So we had a just a simple outdoor time-lapse camera fitted to the dredge, and that stayed on board for the whole time. And we took a photo every 15 minutes. We could change that setting remotely, so I could change it to every minute or every 15 minutes. So that would be captured every 15 minutes, the photo. I guess we just had it going whenever the page was updated every 2 hours, it'd have the latest image there. But you could access any of those timestamp photos throughout the project. So it's just a picture of the dredge where the sand is placed in the middle, and then that's the Gold Coast skyline in the background. And then the whole vessel splits open and sand drops out to underneath there. And the other functionality with this camera was you could also collect up to 10 or 15 second time-lapse footage as well. We didn't particularly use it for this project, but you can, and Alice has got it set up here, so you can just show a little 5-second video every 15 minutes as well. So you can pick that up and you can go for different timestamp images up the top here and pick up another video as well. So just the ability to really capture and see what's happening, or for I guess our purposes, from an environmental purpose, you can go back and look at a photo, see if there's any noticeable sediment plumes or major plumes during dredging or placement. So it's good for environmental compliance. It's also good for, I guess, stakeholder engagement or with the community. So we use these images to create a time-lapse video at the end of the project to show to, on social media as well. So really useful tool, but you can see what's happening out in the field without waiting for contractors' weekly or daily reports as well. You can see exactly what's happening. The manager can come in and see it. The comms team, the environment team can see what's happening out in the field. So that's the idea for it. And then the smarts, I'll leave to Daniel and Alice.
Awesome. Thanks, Damien. Just before we get to the back end, I'll just mention, if anyone is interested, the visuals that we've used here in Power BI. So again, more custom visuals. For the image gallery, we're actually using a custom visual, the image grid, which allows you to kind of scroll through and just have a grid of different images. For the latest onboarding dredge photo, we're using the simple image custom visual. And for the onboard webcam videos, of course, we're using Daniel's HTML content visual to display those videos. So the photos and videos are stored in the Azure Blob database, and I'll just hand over to Daniel just to chat through how, the process of actually retrieving those photos and storing them and naming them in the Azure Blob storage.
Okay. This one's actually pretty straightforward, which kind of lends itself well to the kind of tooling that we're using. So I don't know if some of you may be familiar with Power Automate, which is another product in the Power Platform. Azure has a version that Power Automate is actually built on called Logic Apps. So Logic Apps is essentially very similar in structure, but it doesn't require a user license per month. So normally when you use Power Automate, you have to be licensed like you are Power BI. You're a user, you can set things up and automate all the things. Logic Apps is geared more at enterprise type solutions or business type solutions that need to be kind of unattended and centralized. And one of the nice things about it is it's on a consumption model. So what that means is you pay per run rather than paying a monthly license. If it's short and sharp, it doesn't cost a lot to do. So because you get all the benefits of Power Automate, so very simply, these cameras that Damien has set up, they have a project name against them, and each time a picture is taken or a video is recorded, that's sent by email to a mailbox that, that's how the cameras work. So they send these to a mailbox, and the Logic app just simply polls the mailbox for new mail. So every time a new mail comes in, it looks at the mail to determine that it's got attachments on it. It also looks at the subject line, and then the subject line will contain the project. And all that really does is takes each attachment and stores it in a folder on OneDrive. It's kind of like OneDrive, blob storage, based on that name. So each project has its own folder, and those photos and videos just accumulate inside blob storage. And all that really means is Power BI can connect to blob storage just fine. So when we refresh, we get the metadata for the files, and these visuals just simply connect to those addresses. And much like before, when we talked about the tokens that we give to the Port and Coastal Solutions guys for the upload, same thing happens here. So with these visuals, you have to have a plain URL. You can't handle things like login because Power BI visuals don't let you do that. So we have secure tokens that Power BI knows about and are used for this purpose only, that can retrieve those files and videos and display them inside the visuals.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. We've got, that's probably a good segue to a question we've got in the chat. Is there scope for leveraging Microsoft Fabric and for this solution in the future? Did you want to chat to that, Daniel?
The short answer is it depends. I mean, yes, you could. There's absolutely no reason why you couldn't use Fabric. Fabric's pretty all-encompassing. I think the challenge with Fabric is it's geared towards larger enterprise. So, you know, whilst the details haven't been fully fleshed out yet, it's highly likely that we would need to be paying premium prices for workspaces and various other things. So it's really a matter of commercial and, you know, commercial viability. So, you know, if that stacks up for Damien, obviously, yes, we could look at that. The solution we've built is, you know, using Azure components. A lot of those components are available in Fabric, but I guess Fabric is designed for more scaled up type scenarios. I mean, this works just fine. It's easy to maintain. You know, I might be presuming too much, but I'm pretty sure Damien's a sole trader in terms of what he provides and his expertise. So expecting Damien to fork out for a premium workspace to run such a solution on Fabric might be overkill, as cool as it would be technically. But similarly, we've just looked at the problem and found the best components of Azure that really suit that, and they're pretty cheap to run and they run well. We can leave these running, and I mean, I don't recall us ever having a problem in 3 years.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's all fit for purpose. I think, and Fabric's still quite new. There's still question marks over licensing and things like that. So I think maybe in the future, if there's some new tools in Fabric that could really help us, then we could have a look. But I think, yeah, at this stage, it is working really well. We do have another question in the chat from Maria. Why you made a choice towards Azure Blob instead of using MS Exchange and Dataflow in case of the videos?
I mean, honestly, I didn't consider Exchange and Dataflows just mainly because blob storage is cheap and logic apps are cheap and they perform perfectly well and they don't need any intervention. And I mean, Exchange and Dataflows could work perfectly fine. But again, it's more about, in our case, simplicity. And yes, you could argue Exchange and Dataflows are simple too, but I guess it just depends what your strengths are. But in terms of a data solution, this works well. But yeah, your mileage may vary, of course.
Awesome. Great question. Another one, taking into account that you have a lot of meteorological and operational data in one place, did you consider adding AI capabilities so user can quickly inquire why volume of work was lower or higher on a certain day, or what caused an incident?
I like your thinking. So it's definitely AI becoming a big part of it. And no, I like what you're saying. To me, this dashboard and Power BI and Fabric and AI, it's got unlimited potential for whatever project you're on. But yeah, the more tricks you can use to analyze the data, I think it's fantastic for the client and stakeholders and end users. So yeah, great question.
Definitely. I think so. This is just one example that we're sharing today for the presentation. Over the last few years, Damien has built out a lot of different customized solutions for different dredging projects he's running using this one. as a template. So for every study, he tries to customize different components. And he's always sneaking in all of these things which are pushing the limits of Power BI, and he's always asking what's possible. So I think that definitely you've planted the seed there. Yeah, there's so many different directions you could take this this type of analysis. We might have time for one last quick question if there was one. Feel free to go off mute.
I was just going to quickly, while questions might come on, Alice, but the other great tool, just the export straight to a PowerPoint or PDF, so I can do the date range for a weekly report or monthly report, and it prints out straight away, and that's your report done. Or for the end of project as well, it's got all the data in one spot. So I love it, and you can tailor it, and unlimited potential, like you said. So appreciate Discover AI's abilities to deliver this. It's been great.
Yeah, awesome. No, it's all about simplifying your kind of data processing and management. And as you said, it's got lots of different benefits for being able to track kind of up to date what's happening on your projects, but also the external kind of marketing and comms. Storing all your data in a database is very valuable, but then being able to print a PDF for your reporting needs as well. So I think, yeah, no more questions, just lots of people writing nice comments in the chat. Thanks so much for listening. I'll just quickly share screens now, just to close out the session. Thanks again, everyone, for coming along. Really appreciate it. If you did want to catch up on any of our previous Power BI4Enviro's sessions, or share this or rewatch components, we will be making the recording and a short kind of takeaways blog just available on our blog and YouTube channel as well. If anyone is keen at presenting, we are always looking for new speakers. It could be, you don't have to be an expert in Power BI. You could just be sharing your journey with Power BI, how you got started, or maybe even what you're hoping to learn about how to apply it to the environmental industry. Please get in touch with Christian. So his email is here. As I mentioned, our session for next week, still just finalising the details, but pretty sure it will be a mapping deep dive into Azure and ArcGIS maps. So please bring along your questions, your experiences, and it'll be really interesting just to share our lessons learned, just trying to use these visuals on different kind of projects and different case studies, as well as comparing it to the other mapping visuals that we like to use as well. So thank you so much, and massive thanks to Damien and Daniel for taking the time just to share your kind of knowledge and expertise with the group. I think this was a really interesting case study, one which touches lots of different components of the Microsoft stack, but also has really practical applications as well. So thank you. I think there's a lot of interest there in seeing new and interesting ways of how we can kind of use Power BI with different types of data. So yeah, really appreciate you making yourselves available and sharing the project examples as well.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. So thanks, everyone. Hopefully, yeah, we'll get the details up. Just check in with our meetup page in the next week or so. We'll have another event up there soon. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks everyone for your questions and listening. Awesome.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes.